Among all the species who walked the star roads, humans were considered harmless. Not weak, just quiet, soft-spoken, small by galactic standards. So when Princess Lyra of House Selvar announced she would marry a human, a quiet archivist named Elias Thorne, the galaxy shrugged. There was no scandal, no outrage. At worst, a few nobles whispered. Humans? They read books and drink tea. What threat could they possibly pose? Lyra ignored them. Elias was gentle, thoughtful, and carried a warmth no warrior ever had. He spoke rarely, but when he did, his words were careful and honest. She married him not for diplomacy, not for power, but for peace. Peace, something her people desperately needed. For decades, a KRYTH dominion had pushed its Selvar borders, glassing small moons and stealing resources. Rumors whispered that war was coming, and that Selvar would lose. But Lyra believed peace could still be saved. She believed kindness mattered. She believed Elias, the quiet human. Elias never raised his voice, never showed anger, never boasted. He spent his morning strolling the palace gardens, tracing tree bark and murmuring the names of plants. He brewed tea the old earth way, using real leaf he cultivated himself. The palace staff adored him, though they teased that he seemed too soft for royal life. The queen mother, however, remained cautious. He is gentle, she said, but gentleness is not armor. Lyra only smiled. It is sometimes. Yet she never asked Elias about his past. Not really. He had scars, thin, pale lines along his ribs, but he always brushed them off as old mistakes. He never carried a weapon. He never threatened anyone. He never even raised his hand in anger. To the galaxy, Elias Thorne was simply a quiet human who loved a princess. Then the Dominion came. The invasion began on a violet dawn. KRYTH warships descended like steel locusts, blotting out the sky. The palace shook as bombardments tore through the outer shields. Selvar forces fought desperately, but they were outnumbered 10-1. Panic spread through the civilians sheltering in the Great Hall. The royal guard rushed to evacuate the family, but Lyra refused to flee without her people. That was when a KRYTH general, towering, armored, fanged, strode straight into the shattered throne room. Princess Lyra Selvar, he snarled. Submit your crown. Your world is ours. Her guards moved to defend her, but were thrown aside as if they weighed nothing. The general's troops leveled plasma pikes at the princess. Lyra stood her ground. Her hands trembled, but she did not bow. Elias stepped in front of her. He didn't shout. He didn't posture. He didn't even look angry. He simply said, "No." The KRYTH soldiers laughed. "A human," the general sneered. "Little creature, step aside." But Elias did not move. And when the general struck, Elias caught the blow, barehanded. Everyone froze. The general snarled in disbelief. "How?" Elias sighed. Then, for the first time since Lyra had known him, the quiet human reached over his shoulder and drew a sword not of this galaxy. It was not steel, not plasma, not crystal. The blade shimmered like folded moonlight, humming with a strange, ancient power. Symbols ran along the edge, human symbols, old earth runes, glowing faintly like embers. The air itself changed. The whole grew still, heavy, breathless. Lyra's heartbeat roared in her ears. "Elias," she whispered, "what are you?" But Elias didn't answer. He stepped forward. The moment everything changed, the KRYTH general swung. Elias moved, not like a human, not like any soldier Lyra had ever seen. He moved with a quiet inevitability, no wasted motion, no fury, only precision. His blade cut through the general's armor like it was cloth. The towering invader fell. Silence swallowed the room. Then chaos erupted. The KRYTH soldiers fired. Bolts of energy lit the whole. But Elias flowed between them, deflecting plasma with a sword that should not have been able to touch light. He fought as though each movement were a word in a song only he knew. Not angry, not wild, just calm, a quiet human, a quiet storm. When the last invader fell, the palace guard stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Lyra stepped toward him slowly, her voice shaking. "Elias, why have you hidden this?" He lowered the sword. "I didn't hide," he said softly. "You never asked." The truth of Elias Thorne. That night, as Sailvar forces regrouped and the KRYTH fleet retreated, Elias finally told his story. Humans, he said, had once been peaceful, until they learned the cost of peace. Elias was one of the Wardens, an ancient Earth Order sworn to protect civilizations too gentle to protect themselves. They trained for decades, mastering blade work older than light travel, combat styles that bridge physics and instinct. But Wardens were not conquerors. They fought only when all other paths failed. Elias had taken a vow, to raise his sword only to defend, to speak softly until silence no longer protected the innocent. "I didn't want to be a weapon in your story," he whispered. "I wanted to be someone who brewed tea and tended plants. Someone who gave you peace." Lyra cupped his face, tears burning her eyes. "You gave me peace," she said. "And today, you saved our world." He shook his head. "No, I saved you. And for you, I'd do it again." But the galaxy was watching. Word spread faster than warp drive whisper. A human, quiet, gentle, unassuming, had single-handedly stopped a KRYTH invasion. Video recordings replayed across star systems. The moment he drew that impossible sword. The moment the quiet human became the deadliest being in the palace. Most species reevaluated humanity overnight. The humans, dangerous, terrifying, unpredictably powerful. But Lyra knew the truth. Elias was not terrifying. Elias was good. The second invasion. The KRYTH returned days later, this time with a full armada. The sky burned red. Cities shook. Evacuation alarms echoed across continents. The Queen's Guard braced themselves for annihilation. Lyra ran to Elias, panic rising. "There are thousands of them. Too many. You can't win alone." "Correct," he said. Then he stepped outside and lifted his sword to the heavens. The runes ignited. The air vibrated. And across the horizon, a ripple of light answered. Tens of thousands of humans, wardens, warriors, scholars, medics, decloak across the star system. Their ships shimmered like quiet giants. Their weapons hummed with restrained power. Humans had come not to conquer, but to protect one of their own. Elias lowered his sword and looked at Lyra. "Everything changed," he said gently, "the moment I chose you." The battle that rewrote history. The conflict lasted only 4 to 2 minutes. The KRYTH armada broke, fled, surrendered. Every analyst agreed. They did not lose to numbers. They lost to fear of the quiet human with the moonlight sword. On that day, the galaxy gained a new law. Never provoke a human who has chosen someone to protect. Aftermath. Peace returned. The palace rebuilt. The people celebrated Elias as a hero, but he deflected every compliment with the same quiet humility. "I'm just a man with a sword," he'd say. But Lyra knew better. Elias Thorne was her husband, her protector, her calm in the storm, and the man who changed the fate of a kingdom with a single decision: to stop being quiet